Hello, journaling community. I'm Marissa-Moses, and welcome to Pages in Process. So today, as I'm filming, it is a really sunny, beautiful day here in Los Angeles. I'm in my living room, and it's October 27th, 2021. I've been connecting to this project, Pages in Process, for a while now. It started with me just needing to have an outlet and feeling like going to therapy and connecting with my friends during a pandemic just wasn't enough. And I needed more. I needed to speak to more people. I needed to be able to witness myself. I needed a way to share some of what was going on inside of me, outside of me, beyond my journaling practice and the connections that I was fostering more individually. So this is sort of my practice, my process, my my way of showing up and sharing and kind of checking in with the greater experience of what it means to share. So thank you for being someone that I'm sharing with. And a bit about me in case you're new to my channel or my work is that I am a performing artist, a recovering performing artist. My parents were both in the movement arts, my father a martial artist and carpenter, my mother a dancer and a dance instructor, both of whom have had struggles in life, like so many of our parents have, and so many of us have. And that led to a lot of adverse childhood experiences for me, as well as just feeling like kind of a misfit a lot, just because of the way in which my parents were deeply connected spiritually to the kind of work they did with the body and with their creativity, and had a lot of artistic friends and a lot of that followed a lot of different varied spiritual practices. And so I grew up really steeped in what I now understand as more of like a not just creative, but also what I feel in my heart as a very witchcraft sort of early beginnings that I've been making sense of the more I look into what Kimberly Jones is, a woman who's been doing a lot of work on the wound, the collective wound many of us have and share around being very magical and wanting to be empowered and feeling like we have to hide our light for fear of all of the terrible things that have happened to people who were seen in a light that was not cohesive to what the collective decided was okay or safe or right. So unpacking this has been a challenge for me. It's been hard for me. I've lost a lot of friends and some family along the way, either for a time or forever, we'll see. But I hadn't quite realized how much I had been keeping my voice and myself silent and repressed or like hidden in plain sight. And that's been a hard journey for me. So the more I am healing, the more I'm being called to find ways in which I can really live into the spirit of what it is I do connect to, what I do connect with, what has been vilified or demonized or feared as taboo or woo-woo or all of that stuff. So I find that the arts are a lovely way that we can engage with that kind of energy and that kind of practice. I also have my own personal practice, and I do host some artist circles for others who want to connect deeply to themselves for like deep introspection from a somatic base, as well as kind of feel into what their natural flow and energetic signature is drawn to or away from. So I really love working in that space, that intuitive space. So for those artist circles, I do like new and full moon circles. So if you're ever interested in coming to one, let me know. I'd be happy to send you a link or even meet up with you for a little connection call prior to just chat and get to know each other and see if it's right fit. I also have been doing some clarity around this particular project, pages and process, right? So with this project, I kind of come in, I check in with where I'm at. I process a little bit. I read my morning pages, which are usually stream of consciousness writing. Also tuning into my somatic experience of kind of what's going on and then streaming from there. But sometimes I have other journaling practices that feel good and right. And I've been called more and more to like recognize that I have a connection towards wanting to practice creativity. So I don't know how that's going to continue to evolve. I mean, I've always known that, but I'm finding that I'm feeling like I have more stability and less like it's like when I started this project, it was a lot about like I need to be seen, I need to be heard, I need to share, I need to speak all the things that have been repressed and haven't been said because they're honest and they're true and they need to be spoken. And that has been hard, painful, liberating, joyful, honest, and really raw experience. And I think that like I've done a lot of that excavation. And could I keep going? Yes, probably. And do I want to keep going? I need a little break. Like I need some space. I need some time to kind of process and integrate some other practices that can feel good and right. So one of the things I have been doing is over on Patreon. I have a Pages and Process Patreon where I've been doing sort of somatic attunement and stream of consciousness writing practices, some worksheets, sometimes some journal prompts, and some connecting to where our bodies are at on any given day. Because I'm both a certified massage practitioner as well as been a dance instructor for 16 years, and my parents were steeped in the arts so thoroughly. I have a pretty extensive breadth of knowledge of body, of what our body is, how it functions, sort of the kinesiology of it all, the somatic sensing of it. And I find that because I am recovering from also a lot of performance abuse as a professional dancer, actor, and creative administrator, there's also a lot of like trauma that comes up when I do anything related to the body where I'm asking the body to do something specific. So Pages and Process is also sort of like a bridge, a gateway, sort of a portal for me to enter into where it's like, I don't have to do anything with my body. We're writing. I'm connecting to my body. I'm feeling into it. What's going on here? Like, where don't I feel safe? It's more about the subtleties. And that feels really good to me. And that's someplace I'm like, I might want to stay here forever. And I might. But at the same time, I do recognize like movement is healthy. We should move for the health of our bodies and for our cholesterol and all of that stuff. And so I've also I do want to also kind of rehabilitate some of the pain and the triggers that I have regarding moving my body, regarding using the knowledge of sort of the structure of the physical form, and how our muscles engage and all of that stuff, which is sort of accessible to me, but it was coming up with every time I would engage with it prior, because so much of my work was about doing that kind of stuff, teaching dance classes or injury prevention or working as a massage therapist, that a lot of my work was spent talking about the mechanics and doing more mechanical things and being very technical, which is good and fine and all of that. But there is a lot of other things that I was seeing, sensing, hearing, knowing, sensing, that I love, which is a little bit more creative and intuitive and subtle, like soft skills and subtle body nuances, and not so much the like this is your skull, this is your thorax, this is right. Uh, distal is far away, proximal is closer, like teaching that kind of stuff. Like I have a lot of thought patterns that come up that are very unhealthy related to that, because it's like I think it's my body, my psyche's way of saying, I don't want to be here, I don't want to do this, I don't want to be here, I don't want to do this. And so I'm learning more and more to listen to that and to try to not just use the skills I have because I have them and they do help others, but really feel into like what helps me, what works well for me in my sustainable experience of mental wellness and wanting to move forward into that. What kind of relationships do I foster? What kind of connections do I invest in? And how do I show up in a way that feels like that there are more opportunities for compatible community and sense of belonging, like bringing myself with me into my life, because I felt like I was kind of watching my life as I was living my life before, and it wasn't me that was living my life. It was like an idea of who it was I thought I was supposed to be. And maybe you can relate to that. Maybe you know people who do or have. I think it's from the more I talk to people and the more I'm doing research, the more I realize that that's really a common experience many of us humans have, whether we talk about it openly or we don't, or whether we bypass those feelings, or use an addictive outlet, or don't. So anyways, I'm going to have a sip. And now I'm going to read my pages. These are from today. Oh, one more sip. Today I have cacao. I have this really lovely tin of cacao that my dad bought for me, and it's got a whole bunch of other additives in it and like kind of chai flavor, and it's really delicious. I have this straight cacao as well. I sometimes make, but I like to drink it for a little heart opener. It's a way to kind of connect to the subtle parts of me that are often scared to share. So here we go. There we go. Okay. October 27th, 2021. I am finding freer flow and ease in my practices again. I love and want to make clear curiosities in my tasks and playtime. I am feeling more and more connected to the potential of freely playing in my life. I've been so afraid to play my whole life, or I've just like hated playing since I was a little girl. I would try to get benched on recess or like get in trouble so I didn't have to play. It was the whole thing. This means I'm cultivating more and more safety in my surroundings and honoring what my system senses as healthy, happy, and whole in my direct connections with the outside world as well as my inner world. Yes. I love to feel more fluid in the ways I come forward in my life with ease and measure. Measure has felt so important lately, like this sort of like consistency, measured, paced, like experience of something. And I hear that consistency when we can find that, like that really is, a lot of artists talk about it. You have to show up. You have to show up to your work, right? And a lot of relationship coaches that I've been listening to also talk about, when we have like a love addiction going on, we get kind of addicted to the highs and the lows of love or romance or sexual enlivenment. And when we meet a partner that really is securely attached, like with attachment theory, there's insecure and secure attachments, and there's different types of insecure attachments. But when we find someone who has a secure attachment, or we find a secure attachment in ourselves, it can sometimes feel like boring. And so I'm aware that there's a part of me that feels like, I want to go do something else. I want to go start a new project. I want to go just throw everything out and do something new. And I'm aware though, right now that it doesn't feel like there's something unhealthy about what I'm doing, which is good. Because I think in the past I've been like, I have to get out of here. And there has been something unhealthy about what I've been doing. And so part of what I have needed to get away from has been like the undercurrent of wanting to break a pattern with myself that has not been healthy, or a pattern with others that has not been healthy, that I had been kind of in agreement to showing up with. So now I'm finding this more stable, consistent kind of practice, and it's starting. I'm like at the super beginning stages. I still have my highs and lows. I still have my good days and my bad days, but I'm hoping that with time it will become more and more consistent. And I'm hoping that as I practice showing up, at least from times when I seem and feel and sense myself as more consistent, I'll be able to recognize that consistency in myself as something safe and trustable. And that's going to keep returning and not run away. Those of us with abandonment patterns in our life. What did I say? I said, this means I'm cultivating more and more safety in my surroundings and honoring what my system senses as healthy, happy, and whole in my direct connections. I love to feel more fluid in the ways I come forward in my life with ease and measure. The soft, calm comfort of home, the tender space of offered care. I come into my own senses and sensibilities in meaningful and grounded ways, finding connection to the way daily engagement feels like belonging and care. Oh, finding connection to the way, I'll say that again, finding connection to the way that daily engagement feels like belonging and care. Oh, that is so huge. The feeling of belonging and care. I feel like when we can start to touch into it, and we feel like our surroundings are safe enough that we can keep practicing into it, I feel right there. And there's a little bit of a surrounding sense of like, when's the other shoe going to drop? Is this really safe? I'm not sure if I can trust this. I think that happens for a lot of us. And there's been times where I'm like, no, but really, when is the other shoe going to drop? And I don't think I can trust this. And I was right. And there were situations that I still needed to work out inside of myself, or how I was showing up, or with dynamics I was allowing or turning a blind eye to in my relationships that I hadn't had really transparent conversations about. And the more that I'm doing those things, the more I'm feeling like, and I do feel that way right now, like, I don't know that anything is like waiting around the bend, but I'm used to that and I can kind of feel it. So that's where I'm at now, which feels really good. I'm really grateful. Finding ways to come in and out of connection with people, practices, and projects that feels relationally harmonious and from a place of wellness. Most of my life has not been from a place of wellness. Like I've felt unwell for much and or most of my life, with chronic pain, with unhealthy thought patternings, with repressed emotions, with like actual physical injuries that would happen because of the way in which I was engaging with my body and bypassing my body's signals as a performing artist. That because so much of what I learned how to do was, when you come up against resistance in your body or in your psyche, to push harder and double down. And I'm learning now that like that's not sustainable for me. Like sometimes, you can be doing something healthy and then it is healthy to be like, and I'm going to just keep going to show myself that I can. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like my physical body was not in a place where it was engaging with itself in a healthy way. And then I was trying to push harder. So the only option when we're not healthy and we keep pushing harder and things are not aligned and moving in a good solid direction, then you're gonna exhaust yourself and or injure yourself. And I used to injure myself a lot and then have like really long durational recovery periods. I still have to have a lot of time where I go insular and like little things will flare up kind of my nervous system and I have to like go tend to that. like my mental health, I'm realizing is very sensitive. My system is very sensitive because I'm healing from so much patterned. I'm going to wait for that to be done. Because I'm healing from so much patterned internalized abuse, that my body is learning how to trust me because I haven't been a trustful place for my own body. So in order to keep my body moving, I've actually had to dissociate from it and then push harder so that I haven't been actually listening to and living inside of my physical body, even though I was a dancer, moving my physical body, an actor, listening to my physical body and emotions, a massage therapist with a lot of knowledge around the body. There was still a disconnect and a dissociation and like a fracturing that I had to have in order to show up in the way I was in those particular vocations and projects and ways of being. And this isn't to say that everybody who does those practices does it that way, but there is also a culture to those practices when they start engaging as industry, or from a place of either competition or business, that there's a common collective pattern that does open itself to promoting practices that could potentially, a byproduct of those could be internalized abuse. So I was very careful with how I worded that. I am creating an environment I like to be in. I am cultivating a spirit of flow and greater ease of connection. It has been and continues to sometimes be a hard path to follow, yet when pain, fear, rejection, and projections crop up, I soften and I distance myself from the stimuli that is overwhelming. I connect then in comfort and care with myself, my deep self, my deep inner experience. There is a place underneath everything that I have found, that many people have found, that like inner self, that like back and down in you, not the up and forward you, because that's a different kind. There are different ways you can connect to like mind body consciousness. There's like conscious awareness, which is up and forward. And if you're okay with like masculine, feminine concepts of polarity or spirituality, the up and forward is more like a masculine, and then the back and down is more like a feminine. And in our culture, our overall like societal culture, right, we've coming out of an era of thousands of years of really predominantly focusing on the masculine, and the feminine has been either misused, mistreated, cast to the shadows, or otherwise just unacknowledged or not really valued, or just private and kind of in its own space, so as not to like engage with or deal in a conflicting way with that other kind of energy that's been really predominant. And that's not to say that all the toxicity of patriarchy is all like all masculine energy is terrible. It's not what I'm saying. And all feminine energy is wonderful. It's also not what I'm saying. There can be toxic dynamics and unhealthy strategies in both, right? And ideally, when we have a healthy experience of masculine energy and a healthy experience of feminine energy in each body, like in everybody's body, if we can learn to practice that individually, we can start to hold space for or to create connections that foster more of that in others. The more that can be invited and included in the way in which we come into community with one another, then we start to shape a community sense of belonging and or cultural ways of moving in motion. And I think there's definitely a big shift and also kind of a war happening culturally, societally now, where a lot of people are doing this kind of really deep internal work. And depending on where you're at with it, depending on your intentions with how you want to move, depending on what your nervous system can even deal with or handle. Some people choose to be more active, and some people choose to be more personal. I'm finding that I like to be very personal, but I do want to share more, which is sort of how this project comes into play. Okay, so, or at least how I'm finding this project is coming into play. There was a while where I was like, if I'm going to share, it has to be active. It has to be sort of pushing against what felt like it had been infiltrating my experience for so long. Sometimes we have to push things out that have crossed our boundaries. We have to get them outside of our space, outside of our circle. And then once that's there, right, then you can have more clear, cogent conversation. I think it's really important to complete a cycle of self-defense. If your body is like, I register something as unsafe, like we have to complete that physical experience, whether that's by pushing against a wall, by going to a boxing class, by taking a pillow and smashing it into your couch or whatever it is, but being a writer and journaling it out onto a page, right? Being a different kind of artist and allowing your body and your experience and your expression to fully live, be, realize the undercurrents of what has not been okay, and giving some sort of voice and witness to that, I think can be really healthy and really helpful when used intentionally. Also, sometimes when not used intentionally, sometimes it just happens and then you're like, oh, I feel better. I don't even know what that was. Our dreams do that for us too. Okay, I'm getting on a sidetrack. Back to my pages. I love my way home in my home, and I am taking care to choose and curate my inner experience. In my physical home, mental patterns and body connection. The body connection is deepest and most tender part of this home project, and I seem to be in the midst of. Home, yes. It's like I've been walking this creative and intuition journey towards what I feel, sense, and embody as home. You know that feeling when you come home after a long day or an extended trip? That feeling of returning to someplace familiar where you sense yourself, your love, your creature comforts. That's what I look forward to feeling more of on a daily basis. Yet I am also aware of how there have been times when home doesn't feel like anything I want to return to, that it hasn't felt like anything that I want to return to. A feeling of needing to run away, escape, or dissociate my way out from ... I am very aware of these feelings. I breathe them in, these feelings. I allow their presence to show me how far I've come, and be aware that with baby steps and consistent patterns, we can keep growing in this direction of greater ease and compatibility. Inside with my inner parts. So like inner parts therapy is a really lovely practice. And if you haven't explored it, I encourage you looking up inner parts work, or inner family systems is a very known one. And maybe even finding a therapist who specializes in that, or using some of your journaling practices to get to know some of your inner parts. So inside with my inner parts, with others in relationships and community care, and with environment for a greater sense of belonging. All those things, I'm finding more compatibility. So I connect to my heart and body beautifully. I am encouraged by how far I've come and the progress I've made. You show an ease and fortitude in your own sense of communication and presence. That was me giving myself compliments. Do you give yourself compliments? It can be hard to learn when you're a recovering perfectionist and workaholic, and part of your driving force is to never give yourself compliments and always berate yourself and try to push yourself past where you're at in order to be something better that you can never really attain or get to, but you kind of think you can. But perfectionism is unattainable, so you're not really working for perfectionism, you're working for improvement, but the way in which you're working for improvement is sort of like in a self-abusive kind of way. I don't know if you relate to that, but that is what I am in recovery from deeply. And so it's nice to see, to hear, to read on the page, oh, I gave myself a compliment. That's a good thing. I headed in a good direction. So if you relate to that too, my invitation to you today is to, what kind of compliments could you give yourself? Maybe if what Julia Cameron from The Artist's Way says to do is 3 pages, stream of consciousness writing in the morning, 45 minutes after you wake up, which I love. And if you have that practice, awesome. It allows you to be in that dream space. And then she has other practices and writing prompts that you can also explore deeper into yourself. I highly advocate for exposing yourself to that practice. If you have not yet gotten that book, if you haven't gone on that journey, it's a really beautiful one and offers a really nice pathway. But if you feel called to a little bit today, just the prompt for you is give yourself some compliments. Write them down on a piece of paper, like a love note to yourself. What would you say if you just thought you were the bee's knees? Maybe you were your own best friend. Or if it's hard for you to think of yourself that way, maybe you think of someone who does think of you really well, really, really kindly, like your best friend. And maybe write a letter from them to you, and then read it to yourself and recognize how you can have access to kind thoughts and kind words from yourself for yourself, even if you're imagining that they come from somewhere else or someone else. And if you don't have a best friend or a stand-in physical person for that, some people do like to use their connection to some sort of idea or an essence or a spiritual entity, whatever that means to you. I am specifically recovering from a lot of experiences of like spiritual supremacy that comes from Christianity and the capital G word. So Julia Cameron does use it in her book, but I have chosen to not to not use that word for me, because I find that the word itself, in my experience as the kind of practitioner that I am, I think words hold a lot of weight in them, and they hold a lot of content and context. And there is just so much loaded in that word, and it's been used in so many different ways. And when you say it, it can mean so many different things to so many different people. So for me, it means all of that, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And when I want to connect to something that like I feel safe with, that's not what I choose. That has to be somewhere else for someone else to unpack or to connect with on their own the way they want to. And if that's you, you're welcome to do that. It is not for me because of historical and personal patterns that have been very deeply unhealthy and painful and awful. So I choose to, no, thank you. With that said, thank you for joining me. If you are interested in connecting more, I am thinking about doing accountability sessions where we get together and have tea, and we practice our ability to account for where we've been, where we're at, and where we want to head in connection with others. So I'm thinking of maybe doing like more smaller groups, so that maybe hosting even a couple of different times, maybe starting, I don't know if maybe I would do a couple prior to, but maybe like a launch in January, and see if there are some people who want to just get together and have like a little accountability group where we can show up on a weekly basis and just kind of touch base. And like, it's not therapy, it's not really like accountability, like holding you accountable, but it may serve the space of like connection to self, connection to other, being able to like be witness, but also witness others, and find a sense of like creative connection and community. So I'm hoping to, again, start that maybe formally in January, and maybe some pop-ups here and there prior to that, to get a sense of like where you're all at, and if this feels good, and see where that goes. I like to work instinctively, intuitively, but more and more I want to move forward into like sustainable practices that can continue. So hopefully maybe this will be one of those. If you'd like to join me on Patreon, I would love to have you over there, where we get together for like cozy little somatic writing sessions. And sometimes I post some worksheets. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Enjoy whatever you're up to, and I will see you next time. Bye.